Welcome to my OSN InfyTQ Day 1 Python training.
Good evening, students, and we are going to start now in Zoom. Madam Edrina is there right now, so she will be able to take this session for you for next 4 days. It will be in Python. Okay, and any doubts you have, you send it to support@myonlinestatus.in by email, and she'll be able to clarify your doubts in the next session. And by today evening, you will be receiving another notification from IOSIN for taking the test. So whatever the topics she has covered today, and she will be giving the test, and you are supposed to complete it at the earliest by tomorrow morning. By 10 a.m. we will be finalizing the results, and the rank will be announced every day morning. Okay. So I hope you will utilize this session. Thank you, ma'am, for taking this responsibility, for taking this training.
Thank you,
Welcome you to this session for Panimala students. I'll hand over the session to Madam Edrina now. Please take over, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. So good afternoon, all. So I'm Edrina. Good afternoon, all. I'm Edrina. So I'll be handling your InfyTQ training for you. So as sir said, the first 4 days of your training will be based on Python, and the remaining 3 days will be moving into your DBMS, right? And I hope, I believe that you're all third-year students, and also that you all belong to different streams of engineering, right? And I also believe that you were the first branch to study Python in the first semester. So almost like you are now in your 6th semester. So first day, we'll be studying the basics of your Python language. We'll be starting with your basics of your Python language, and in the second day, we'll move on into your object-oriented concepts, right? And if you have any doubts, you can send in your response. You can send in your doubts in your chat box, or else you can send in your doubts to your support email ID, right? So either way you can do it. So we'll be starting with the session now. And if you have any doubts in between, you're welcome to share your doubts in your chat box, and or else you can also send in your responses, doubts to your support email ID, right? So the first thing is that we'll be starting with the introduction to your Python language, right? So you have studied about your Python language. So what do you feel is the big difference between a Python and the other programming language, right? Or else tell me, what kind of language is a Python? You can send in your responses in your chat box. What kind of language is a Python language? We say that Python is a high-level programming language. So other than that, what type of language is Python? Right? Of course, it's an object-oriented programming language, right? And we also say that a Python is a very interactive programming language. And the other important thing, or the other major difference between the Python and your other programming language, is that we say a Python is a interpreted language. It is not a compiled language, right? So what is a compiler? You know that any high-level programming language, and it cannot be understood. Your machine language, your hardware of your computer cannot understand the high-level programming language that you write. The high-level programming languages that we write, it follows your simple English language, and that cannot be understandable by your hardware of your computer, and my hardware can understand only 0 and 1. So I need something. So here comes your compiler. This compiler is a system software which is used to convert your high-level language into a low-level language. So this is what we call to be your process of your compilation. And even though when I say it's converting, other than converting, your compiler also checks for your syntax of your program. It also checks for your syntax of your program, whether your program follows all your rules, whether you have any syntax errors. So that is what happens in your compilation process. Again, when you talk about an interpreter is almost the same as a compiler. So what is the difference between when I say that Python is an interpreted language and it is not a compiled language, right? So what do you think is the difference between these two? An interpreter also does the same thing. An interpreter is also used to convert a high level language to a machine level language, but we still emphasize on the point that compiler is something it's right. Right, people are giving me the right answers. Also, thank you. So an interpreter, when you take a compiler, a program is being executed as a whole. So when you talk about an interpreter, that is not the case. When you have an interpreter, it does the process line by line. So that is the difference between a compiler and an interpreter. And we say that Python is an interpreted language. And please do remember this, right? So now when you talk about your introduction, we will not be going into the much details, the history about your Python, because we'll not be having much more time. So we'll be straight away moving on to your variables. And also remember that Python, you don't have any opening and curly braces like you have studied C, C++, and Java. People who are familiar with C, C++, and Java, knowing that we don't have any opening and curly braces here. Python follows something called as indentation. It follows a indentation, right? So just like any other language, right? Every language, just like all your other programming language, Python has also got variables, right? And when you talk about another important thing, when we relate about a variable here, when you say Python, it is again a dynamically typed programming language. It is a dynamically typed programming language. So what is a dynamically typed programming language, right? So if you can remember your C program, all your other languages, right? When I declare a variable A, right? I cannot just have it as A is equal to 10. I cannot have it as A is equal to 10. Instead, it should be, right? A variable should be prefixed with a data type. You'll have a data type. It is either int, float, character, or bool, whatever it is, right? So you should have a data type. Followed by the data type, you will have a variable and then a value. But when you talk about a variable in Python, you don't have to give a data type, right? You don't have to give any data type. It is dynamically done by your compiler, right? So the first thing when I say variable, what is a variable, right? A variable, it is, you can also call it to be an identifier, right? So where do I store a value, right? When I have a student, when I have someone called as a student, right? So every student has got a name, right? Using the name of a student or using an ID number or a register number of a student, I'll be able to identify a student. So the same way, I'll be using a variable in a programming language. And always remember, the variable that you give should have a meaningful name, right? So that is the first thing. In as you follow a set of rules for naming a variable, and even though I follow a set of rules for naming a variable, always remember that to give a meaningful name of a variable, right? And remember that Python is case sensitive, right? Python is case sensitive. So when you talk about a valid identifiers, right? What are the naming conditions that are applicable for all the programming languages that you have studied? It is also applied here. For example, when you take a variable name should begin only with an alphabet, or it should begin with an underscore. A variable name cannot begin with a number. No special character other than an underscore is allowed, and no white spaces, no blank spaces, nothing allowed in a variable name. So here when I can see here, I've given I want you to mute yourself. When you enter, can you please mute yourself? Sai Dinesh, can you mute yourself? That's okay. Okay. So I have given you a set of valid identifiers and a set of invalid identifiers. Right? So now when I have a valid identifier, the first one starts with an alphabet. So this is valid. And again, I have told you that a variable name can begin with an underscore. So underscore n is valid. And the next is n underscore 9 is also valid because of only special character that is allowed is an underscore. Right? And next is when you take an invalid identifier as example 1a, a variable name cannot begin with a number. And next is n modulo 4, no special character is allowed other than an underscore. And the next if you can take, I have n space 9. Again, no special character other than an underscore is allowed. So no white spaces are allowed. So these are some of your examples of valid identifiers and invalid identifiers. Right? So now I have a question for you. Right? Can an underscore be a name of a variable? Can I use an underscore as a name of a variable? Right? So just an underscore. Can I use an underscore as a name of a variable? Is my question clear? Can an underscore be used as a name of a variable?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Right. So now when I say a is equal to 10, right? And when I say print of a, 10 is printed as an output, right? So now I have underscore equal to 12. So right. So now tell me whether an underscore can be used as a name of a variable. I say a is equal to 10. Then I say underscore is equal to 12. Then I say c is equal to a plus underscore and then print c. It's 22. Do I get an error? No, I don't get an error. So can an underscore be used as a name of a variable? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So you can use an underscore as a name of a variable. So always remember this. An underscore can be used as a name of a variable. So this is possible. You don't have any issues with this. This can be used, right? So, right. So now the next thing. So now I have a variable, right? As you know, you have studied about the naming conditions of a variable. So using that, I have a variable. So how do I assign a value to a variable? How do I assign a value to a variable? I've used my equal to operator. Using your equal to operator, you can assign value to a variable. So I say A is equal to 5, name is equal to hello, and SAL is equal to 2000.50 and print A, print name, and print sal, right? It will be displayed. And if you can see, none of the variables are being accompanied with a data type, right? None of the variables are being accompanied with a data type. So does this mean that Python doesn't have any data type? When I give a variable, I don't give a data type with the variable. Does this means that Python doesn't have any data types? So can you say that there are no data types in Python, or are there data types in Python? Right. You have data types in Python, but the only thing is that you don't have to give them, right? So int, string, float, right? Python have data types. There are data types in Python, right? So we'll see the data types now. So before going on that, we'll see about how do you assign values to a variable, and then we'll move on with your data types, right? So now when you take your variables and a value. So if you can see, I have three variables here, X, Y, and Z, and all these three variables are assigned a single value 50, right? So this is equivalent to writing X is equal to 50, Y is equal to 50, and Z is equal to 50. So instead of writing them each and everything in a separate line, I'm writing it in a single statement. So this is the case where multiple variables are assigned to a single value, right? And here you have multiple values and multiple variables. This is again equivalent to writing A is equal to 5, B is equal to 10, and C is equal to 15. Okay? So in this way also you can assign them, right? And now tell me, you have semicolon in Python. Are there any semicolon? Right? I've shown you few small programs. Did I use a semicolon there?
No, ma'am.
No, I haven't used a semicolon, right? So remember that semicolons are not mandatory in Python, right? So we have seen that semicolons are not mandatory in Python. So now I say A is equal to 10. I have a semicolon, and then I say B is equal to 20, and then I say print A, and I have a semicolon, and then I have print B, and I have a semicolon, right? So I've used a semicolon here. Does this make any difference in the code? No.
No,
So
ma'am.
use a semicolon or you don't use a semicolon, it is perfectly okay with Python, right? So, but there are specific cases, right? Where there are very specific cases where you need to have a semicolon, right? So usually we tend to use semicolon because we are practiced in that way, right? So people from IT background, CSE and IT students, right? You tend to use semicolon. So even you use a semicolon, there are no issues, but semicolons are needed. But when do I use a semicolon in Python? Right, what is this now? The same program, right? Both are the same. Both the programs are the same.
Values.
Yes, they are the same, but I've written in a different way, right? So yeah, when do I have to use a semicolon in Python? When there are two statements, when there are two different statements, and when I have to write these two different statements in a single line, right? In that case, I go for a semicolon, right? As someone told me, it's right. Semicolon separates each command, right? So semicolons are not mandatory, and even though you use a semicolon here, it is not an issue. But when do you use a semicolon is when I'm combining two statements in a single line. So A is equal to 10 and B is equal to 20 are two different statements, and when I write them in a single line, I go for a semicolon in Python, right? So this is where you'll be using your semicolons in Python. And when you talk about comments in Python, there are two types: multi-line comments and single-line comments. So your single-line comment starts with a hash symbol, and your multi-line comment starts with a triple single quotes or a triple double quotes, right? So when you talk about a comment, you know that commands are not an executable part of a program, and commands are used only for the purpose to improve the readability of your program. Commands are used to improve the readability of your program. So when I write a single line comment, it starts with an hash, and when I write a double line comment, you either use a triple double quotes or a triple single quotes. Multi-line comment, it can be 2 lines, 3 lines, or any number of lines that I want, right? So now we'll be moving on to your data types. So tell me, what are the data types that are available in Python?
Int, float, long int,
Int, float, long int,
string,
string,
tuples,
tuple,
list,
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 dictionary,
boolean sets,
booleans, very good,
sets,
sets, yeah, that's right. So you have a data type called as character. Do you have a data type called as character?
Yes, ma'am.
yes ma'am,
Yes. Oh, are you sure you have a data type called as character in Python?
no
Yes,
STR,
ma'am,
ma'am.
no ma'am,
Right, there is no data type called as character in Python. What about double?
Long,
Double, you have double? We
No,
have
ma'am.
float. What about double?
no,
Yes or no?
For double, you use long,
ma'am.
ma'am.
For double, you will use long ints. Right. You don't have any double data type. Right. You don't have any double data type. There is only float. Right. So remember, there is no data type for storing a double and a character in Python. What about complex?
yes,
You have
ma'am.
a data type called as complex?
Yes, ma'am.
no ma'am,
No. You have gone through the basics of your Python language? Or you remember from whatever you have studied in your first year? Right. So, okay. So we'll move on to your data types, and there is a data type called as complex, right? So when you talk about your data types, the first thing is that I've told you that Python is a dynamically typed data type. So how do you know what is a data type of a variable? How do you know the data type of a variable? So you use a function called as type, right? We use a type method for that. So using your type method, you find the data type of a variable, right? So these are the standard data types that you find in Python. So you'll have numbers, string, list, tuple, dictionary, and strings and booleans. So these are the standard data types. So we'll see one by one. So the first data type is numbers, and this data type is used to store numeric values, right? A number is used to store a numeric value, and under your number you have 4 more types. One is your int, long int, float, and your complex, right? Int, long int, float, and complex, right? So now what is your int? So this int stores both positive as well as your negative numbers, or we say an int data type is used to store a signed number, -20, -45, -80, right? So these are all some of the negative numbers. So an int data type can have both a positive as well as negative numbers. So your next data type under your number will be your long int, and this long int is used to store higher values of integer numbers, right? So whenever I use a long int, at the end of your number, I will use a capital L, and this denotes that this number is a long int value, right? So the next data type is a float. This is used to store numbers with decimal value, right? This is used to store numbers with decimal values, right? So however the number may be big The number may be small even when it's 1.0 or it is 1.000009 or 9.999 something. Any kind of number, when it has a decimal value, it will be stored in a float data type. And next is your complex numbers. So this will be of the form x plus iy, or you say it is normally denoted as x plus iy, or you can also say a plus ib. This is where a is your real part and anything that starts with I becomes your imaginary part. Right? So these are the data types that you have under your number. So under your number, you'll have 4 types. One is your int. This is used to store your sign number, both positive and negative. And next you'll have long int to store higher values of integer numbers. And the number, you will have to use L, right? You will have to use L after a number when you're using a long integer. And float, any number with a decimal point, you store it in a float value. And next is a complex value. It contains both, it contains a real and a imaginary part. It contains a real and an imaginary part, right? So now tell me, we'll be moving on to your typecasting now. Right, so what do you mean by typecasting? Typecasting or
Conversion of one data type into another.
conversion of one data type into another. Right, can someone tell me what happens in this program?
Error.
Error. So what I'm actually trying to do here, A is equal to 10 and B is equal to 10.5. So what is the type of A?
Int.
A is an integer value. And what about B?
Float.
Float.
Float. So now I'm trying to add an integer and a floating point value, right? I'm trying to add an integer and a floating point value, right? So will I get an output or will I get an error?
Get out.
Get the output.
But they belong to 2 different data types. Right? They belong to 2 different data types.
Ma'am, only string character we can concatenate.
Right. So as of now, what happens here is that there is no error. I'll be getting an output. Are you sure? Everybody is sure about that? Right. So we'll check the output.
No, semicolon. Semicolon.
Okay. Semicolon. So I just told you, right? Semicolons don't play a big role here, right? If you want, you can have it, or if you want, you can just remove it, right? Semicolons becomes a habit now. That is it, right? If the semicolon is bothering you, I'll remove this, right? I'm getting an output as 20.5. So here, I'm adding an integer and a floating point value, right? I'm adding an integer and a floating point value. So I'm getting an output. So what happens here is that I have a type conversion that is being done internally, right? So when do I have an internal type conversion, right? This is called as your implicit type conversion. So this is done internally by your compiler, and you don't do anything, right? You don't do anything, right? So when does this type of conversion happens, right? So when I'm converting, right, when I'm converting a lower value to a higher value, right? So here your integer is converted to a float value. Integer is converted to a float value. And remember, when you do your internal type conversion, you don't have any data loss. No data loss is being occurred here, right? So I'll show you one more example here. So now tell me what happens here. It's an error, or I'll get an output.
Error, ma'am.
Error. So we'll check. The previous also the same thing happened, right? You are adding two different data types together, but I'm getting an output. But why is this? You say that now this will get me an error.
Can't add a string and integer. ma'am.
Can't add a string and an integer, ma'am.
Right. So now you understand why I'm telling that Python is an interpreted language. So if the same program was a compiled program, will you get this answer 20.5?
No, ma'am.
No. If was it a C program? If this is a Python program now, if it was a C program, would you have get this error? Will you have got this 20.5?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
You wouldn't have got then 20.5. You'll be getting only a error as a message, right? So that is why we say that this is an interpreted language, right? So now previously I have added an integer and a float value, right? I've added an integer and a float value, and that didn't give me an error because automatic type conversion was possible. Your lower data type integer was converted into a float value, right? Your lower data type was converted to a float value. And now, right, that was your first case. And the second case, I say I have a variable called as D, right? And this D is declared as hello. And now I say I'm adding A and D, but I get an error saying that unsupported operand type for plus integer and string. You cannot add an integer and a string together. So now, but if I have to get an output of 10 hello, what should be done now?
E is equal to str of A plus D.
Right. I will have to convert the data type of A to a string. Now A is an integer, so I'll have to change the data type of A to a string. So now what happens here? A is converted to a string. So now if I compile the program, right, so you understand the difference now. The first type of type conversion happens automatically, and that is called as your implicit type conversion. And when it comes to your second type of type conversion, you call it to be your explicit type conversion. And this does not happen internally, but it happens manually. It has to be done manually. So what is the difference between these two? So when you talk, when do you do a implicit type conversion and when do you do a explicit type conversion? So when you talk about implicit type conversion, it is from a lower data type to a higher data type, right? It is from a lower to a higher data type, right? But when you take a case of your explicit data type, and this is from a higher to a lower data type. So in that case, what happens is that you may have a chance of a data loss. So when you talk about implicit type conversion, when it comes to an explicit See Jagannathan, random member, can you all please mute yourself? Yes, Jagannathan, can you please mute yourself? Yes, thank you. Right. So this what happens, and always remember when I say data loss and explicit conversion, not every time you will have a data loss. You may have a data loss sometime, right? Not When I say data loss, it doesn't occur every time, but you may have a data loss or you may not have a data loss, right? So this is with your numbers data type, right? Right. So now, a small recap of whatever you have studied in your numbers, and under your numbers, how many data types that you have?
4, ma'am.
Under your numbers, you have 4 data types: int,
Float,
Float, str,
complex, right?
string.
So now we'll be moving on with your string data type, right? So before moving on to your string, can someone tell me what do you know about strings in Python?
Showing characters in alphabetic
Sequence of character.
Sequence of characters.
It must be typed within
Sequence of
double
characters.
quotes.
Whenever we
Should
say
be
string,
enclosed
it is
with the
again
double
sequence
quotes.
of character. So this is not alone in Python. In any language, whenever I say string, it is a sequence of characters. So how are strings represented in Python?
It is enclosed with the double quotes.
Double quotes.
Double quotes.
double quotes.
They are represented within double quotes. Very good. Any other things? How are so when you say that when I take a C language and C++, we say that internally it is represented using your ASCII value. But here, when you talk about strings in Python, do you use ASCII value? You have heard about ASCII values? We're talking something in Greek and Latin. Is to find the minimum and maximum function. No. You haven't heard about ASCII, ASCII, American Standard Code for Information Exchange, right? 0 to 255. Right. When you talk about C and C++, it was ASCII value. And now when it comes to Python and Java, what it is? Something that ends with code. Something that ends with code, CODE. Still you're not able to find the answer? Right. Yes, Divya, you're right. It's Unicode. It's Unicode. And it is Unicode, right? So now what are the other things that you know? You have told me that it is a sequence of characters. And do I have a data type for storing a character? Do I have a data type for storing a character?
String.
Yes, ma'am.
No. Just now I told you, you don't have any data type called as character in Python. Remember. There is no data type called as characters in Python. And again, how is a string being represented? You said that you will use a double quotes. Only a double quotes is possible?
Single quotes.
Single quotes
Single quotes, that's it.
or triple quote.
Triple quotes.
Or str.
Yes, think. Other than this, what do you know?
String is immutable in Python, ma'am.
Strings are immutable. How are strings in Python treated as? See, I have 4 ways of storing a character in Python, right? You can use a single quotes, you can use a double quotes, a triple single quotes, or a triple double quotes, right? Remember, you will have 4 ways here. The first is a single quote. A string can be placed within a double quotes, or it can be placed with triple double quotes, or the last way is using a triple single quotes. So these are the possible ways of storing a string in Python. And when you talk about strings in Python, they are treated as array. They are treated as just like you have array, right? So when you say array, so a string is treated as a character array. A string is treated as a character array. Even though I have a character of size 1. When I say A is also a string, ABC is also a string, XYZ is also a string, and if even a number that is given within a double quotes, you also treat it to be a string in Python. Even when I have a single character, it is called only as a string and not a character. So even when I have a single character, it is treated as a character array of length 1. It is treated as a character array of length 1. Right? So right here, so we'll be mainly concentrating on 3 important string operations, right? So one operation is already known to you. You should have studied in all your languages. It is your addition of 2 strings. So addition of 2 strings is called to be concatenation, right? So this is your last operation here. When I have a plus, right? When I have a plus, so this means that I'm adding 2 strings together, and this is called to be your concatenation. And this colon, right? This sorry, this is not a colon. This is an asterisk, and this says that this is a repetition operator. We call it to be a repetition operator. When I say string 1 into 2, then your string 1 will be repeated twice. Right? When I say string 1 into 3, your string will be repeated thrice. And now when I say string 1 or 4, you'll be printing the 4th character of your string. When I say 4th character, so how does your index of your string starts? As I told you, strings in Python are treated as
0,
right.
1.
They are treated as just like your arrays. They are treated like your character array, which means that your string index starts from 0. So what is str1 of 0?
H.
str1 of 0 will be H, str1 of 2 will be E, and 3 will be L, and so on, right? So when you say about your 4th, when you say str1 of 4, this is not your 4th character, but this should be your 5th character. This should be your 5th character of your string. This should be the 5th character of your string. So what you study something new here, this is called as your slicing operator. Right, when you take into account, you will be counting the space also. You'll be counting the spaces also. Right. So now when you say colon 0 colon 2, and this colon stands for something called as a slicing operator. So what is a slicing operator? A slicing operator is where you are dividing your string based on some parameters, right? So now when I say 0 to 0 colon 2, so the first parameter 0 indicates your start position, and the next parameter 2 indicates your ending position, right? So now I'll have to print the string 1 starting from 0 to 2, but always remember that your ending position will not be included. That is, your ending position will be excluded, right? So now when I say 0, I'll have to print 0 and 1. I'll have to print 0 and 1. What is 0? H is 0 and E is 1. That will be printed. So these are the basic string operations, right? So here you will be concentrating on string slicing, string repetition, and your string concatenation, right? So out of the three operations, string slicing is something that is very important, and you will get questions based on your string slicing. So we'll see some more examples for your string slicing as we move on. So you are clear with your string operations, right? So this is your output of your previous program. So right, as I told you, when I concatenate, right, when I do my repetition operator and also your concatenation, you will not have spaces, and if you want to add spaces, you will have to add it manually, right? So right, so now when you talk about, as I said, print A of 1, what will be the output of print A of 1?
E, ma'am.
The output here. Right. So now I have hello world is the string. I say :5. So it has to starting position is 2 and your ending position is 5. So what I'll have to print 2, 3 and 4. Don't include your ending position, right? You don't have to include your ending position in your slicing operation. You will have to print only your starting from the starting range 2, 3 and 4. What will be the output?
LLO, ma'am.
LLO, ma'am.
Right, so LLO will be the output here. Right, now tell me if you can understand what is this.
Negative indexing starts from end, ma'am. It will start from right hand side, ma'am. From the last letter. Last letter onwards will write.
Right. So when you talk about slicing, there are two types of slicing. So what we have seen previously, that was called as your positive slicing, or you simply call it as slicing. So what you see now, this is called as your negative slicing. I'll tell you what is the difference. So when you say positive slicing, I start my string slicing from the beginning of your string. The slicing operation starts from your beginning of your string. But when you talk about negative indexing, I start reading from your end of your string. And again, when you talk about positive indexing or your slicing, your index of your string starts from 0. Index of the string starts from 0, whereas negative indexing, the indexing starts from -1. So when I take here, so when you take the case here, this exclamation mark will be -1 and D will be -2, L will be -3, R is -4 and O is -5, right? So you understand, right? So to be very clear, if you want, we'll write it here. This exclamation will be equal to -1, right? And then you say D equal to -2 and L equal to -3, and next you will have R equal to -4 and O equal to -5, right? So now since we are bothered about -5, so when you say -5, I'll be printing -5, -4 and -3. So -5, -4 and -3 will be printed as your output, right? So that is why I get the output as ORL. So you are clear with this? So when you talk about negative slicing, you begin from your end of your string, right? You beginning from your end of your string, and when you begin from your end of your string, you have it as -1, -2, -3, -4, -5 and so on, right? So you're clear with that? right? So I'll show you one more example. So before that, you will be using a function called as length function, and this calculates your length of your string, right? So now go through this example. Right, you will find something different here. Just go through this example. You find anything different here? So I'll tell you what.
The first one talks about the starting, and the second is ending, and the third is interval.
Right, very good. So this is like, so usually we have seen a slicing operation with only one colon, but here we are seeing it with two colons. So the first one, the case of your first one here. So the first one is can you right, so now when I say just print S and a colon, the entire string will be printed. Double colon also, the entire string will be printed here. And here when you say S double colon and a -1, the entire string will be reversed. So this is how you will be reversing a string in Python. You will be reversing a string in Python. So now when I have 3 colons, how do I interpret it? 1 is the starting position, right? And 3 is your ending position. And the next one, how many steps do I have to take? So since this is an empty colon, by default it is 1. Since it is an empty colon, so by default I have 1 here. By default it is 1 here. So now when I say start from 1, I will have to print 1 and 2. So I'll be printing B and C. So now when I say 1, 4 and 2, I'll have to start from 1. The ending position is 4 and 2 steps. So usually first when I don't have this 2, this will be like I'll be printing 1, 2 and 3. No ending position will be included. So I'll be printing 1, 2 and 3. But now when I say 2, what do I do is that after 1, I'll have to move 2 steps. So I'll not be printing 2, but straight away I'll be printing 3. So now I'll be printing only 1 and 3. So that is why the answer is BD. So now it says -2, -5 and -1. So -2 is your starting position, ending position and -1. So now when I say -2, I'll have to print -2, -3 and -4. That will be printed as EDC. And here -2, -5 and -2. When I say -2, same way it is 2 steps. So usually this would have been -2, -3 and -4. But now after reading my -2, I will directly move to your
-3.
Right, after reading your -3, I will not be going to your -3, but instead I'll be moving to your -4. Right, you're clear with this? Right, and now what happens here? This line.
Error.
Error or no output?
No output, ma'am.
Why it's no output?
Up to -15, there are no. We don't have up to -15. No.
There is nothing in -15. Right, so what about this one? Print S of -15.
No output, ma'am.
No output.
Do you have a Python shell with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Why don't you try this last 2 lines in your shell? Can you try?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Try and let me know the output.
String index out of range.
Right, it shows for S -15, it will be showing index out of range. And what about the last statement?
Positive and negative slicing are combined, ma'am.
Right. So you don't have any.
Output.
Try this line and tell me if there is any error. This line. Print S of
No error, ma'am, but the output is null.
-1. This line. Print S of -2, -15, -1.
String index out of range. Very good.
See, this statement showed you an error. Print S of -15 showed you an error.
Yes, ma'am.
But this statement is not showing you an error.
Yes, ma'am. Not no error, ma'am.
Right, no error and no output, right? So understand the difference. Right, okay. So remember your slicing. Go through your slicing once again, and if you want, you can take a screenshot of this slide alone, right? So almost all the combinations I've tried to add in this slide. So anyway, make a note of it, right? And for reversing a string, please note that this is double colon and -1 is used to reverse a string in Python. You will use double colon and -1 for reversing a string in Python, right? So now we'll be moving on to your string methods, right? So before that, I would like to tell you something. So this is not a regular Python course what you are learning. This is a fast track course, right? So we have. So this is like we have only 4 days of time to complete it. So I will not be teaching you all the string methods that we have, right? So I will be teaching you only a very few string methods that you will be using it in your program, right? So that is the reason I will not be teaching you all the string methods, but I will teach you a few string methods that you will be using it in your program, right? So this is what we'll be doing it in all the parts, right? So we are not I'm not taking this course for you to write an exam on Python, right? This course is aimed at for covering your syllabus of Python, that is for your InfyTQ. So that is the reason I will not be teaching you all your string methods. I'll be covering few string methods that is very important for you to do your program, right? So this is how we'll be moving on. So I'll be skipping some string methods in between. Is it clear? Right? And right, the first method, what you'll be seeing is called to be a strip method. This is used to remove all the leading and trailing white spaces. So a white space that is before the beginning of your string is called as a leading white space, and the white space that are after your string is called to be your trailing white spaces, right? So now when you say a dot strip, right, all your white spaces will be removed. All your white spaces will be removed. A lower converts into lowercase, upper converts into uppercase, and replace method is used to replace a particular character. And remember, when I say replace capital H, it will be replacing only capital H. The capital H is different from a lowercase h, because Python is case sensitive. Because Python is case sensitive, it is different. Right, and split method, remember this is again a very, very important method. So what do you do in a split method, right? So you are dividing a input string into substrings. An input string will be divided into substrings. So that is what you will be doing it in your split method. So that is what you'll be doing it in your split method, right? So now when I have a split method, this is your input string. So if you can see your input string, hello world, I have a comma in between. So now when I say a dot split of comma, so whenever I have a comma, whenever I encounter a comma, your input string will be splitted into another strings, right? So now when I say, so if you can look at your output, this will be your output here, right? So the same program, I'll show you with one more. Right, so now I have 3. So let's check this. Right, so wherever I encounter a comma, it will be divided, right? If you want, you can try adding one more comma here. So this is your purpose of your split method, right? So what is your split method does here? So whenever I encounter a comma, it separates it. It is not only a comma, any separator that you want, you can give here, right? Anything that you want, you can give here. I'll show you one more example, right? So just go through the next example. I'll have an input text. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Do I have any separators here like comma, dot? Do I have any separators here?
No, ma'am.
No. So what would I give in split now?
Space.
Space. Right. So when you give an empty split like that, right? When you give an empty split without anything inside, right? Then it considers a white space. Then it considers a white space. So whenever I have a white space, wherever I have a white space, it will be divided. So this will be divided into separate substrings, right? So there is one more variation of a split method where you decide how many splits that you can have in a string. How many splits that you can have in a string. So this takes us into two parameters. Your first is your separator, the other is the max split. And this max split, this is an integer. This is a integer, right? It should always be an integer, right? So now this is your input string. So now when I say cast dot split and 1, this means that whenever I encounter an, I will have to split your string into substrings. And now when I split them into substring, I will have to split it only once. So after this, when you look at your output, this will be like Audi will be one substrings, Kia and BMW, and the rest will all be into another substring. And the next thing I say, 2 split, max split will be 2. So which means Audi will be one substring, Kia will be one substring, BMW and Volvo will be all the other substrings, right? So look at your output now. As I told you, the first one, when I say max split of 1, Audi will be one substring and the remaining will be all another substrings, right? So the next one, 2 substrings, Audi will be 1, Kia will be 1, and the remaining all will be another substrings, right? So this is how you'll be using your max split parameter, right? So now when do you use them in your program? So I have told you that this split method, you'll be very frequently using it in your program, right? So when do you use it? Specifically, you'll use them when you read an input, right? Yes, anything? Right, when you read an input, suppose I give you a program to read an input and ask you to sort it into, sort the given input. So in that case, what you do is that you will be reading your string from the user. And when you read a string from the user, you cannot use the string, you cannot apply a sort function to your strings as it is, right? So you can first, what you will divide is that you will divide your string into substrings, and after dividing them into substring, then you will be using your sort function. Right? So whenever you read input from your user also, you will be using your split function. Suppose when you read an input, multiple inputs separated by spaces. And if you want to read them in your program, then you will have to use your split method. Right? So this is one method that you'll be using it in your program, right? So, right. So what will be the output of this program?
Hello world.
Hello world. Will there be space between hello and world?
Yes, no, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
So there is no space between hello and world. And if I do want to have a space, how do I write?
A plus B space we should give, ma'am.
Hello.
This is right. Or you can simply give space in your hello. The very simple method will be you give space in your method, or if you want to write it professional, is this way the right way? Is this the right method? Right. You can give spaces in any different ways that you want. You can also include your /t also. /t can also be added here, right? So now, I'm typing you a question in your chat box. I want a string in this way. In my output, I want a string to be displayed in this way. Right? You are able to see the string that I've sent you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I want my output in this way. How
You
is it
want to
possible?
use slash double quote.
So we'll try it. Is it right?
No, ma'am. Chennai is a plus semicolon of semicolon plus beautiful plus semicolon of semicolon plus capacity.
Can you type this in your chat box and send me the answer? Chennai is a beautiful city. Right, Subhash is right. Someone has given me this answer. We'll check this. Subhash, what Subhash has given me, right? And right, you say that you want me to open a single quotes. Close it to the single quotes. That's also right. And normally, the general thing what we do here is that when we say Chennai is a beautiful city, right? We use something called as a escape sequence, right? Use a escape sequence. Remember, you will have /n, /t, and all those things. Right, now this will work. Right, now this works, right? Right, people are giving me the right answer. I'm not able to see your names. So Nikhilesh, Nikhil, Subhash, Hemant, and PP, Tarun, okay, Nath, Yogesh, Arvindan, Devil, what a name is that? Right, okay. So thank you all for your response. Right. So please, Surya, can you mute yourself, Surya? Surya, can you please mute yourself? Right, and now tell me what is this?
str of age.
So what is this error?
String on int or not.
Right, you cannot combine a string and a int, right? You cannot combine a string and an int. So how do you combine them? You'll be using your format operation, right? You'll be using your format function, right? So when I use a format function, I'll be using wherever place in a string. When I'll have to place an integer in a string, in that place I'll be using a placeholder. So what is a placeholder? A placeholder is a set of opening and a closing brace, right? So see, when you change your age to a string, right? I don't think it is a right approach, right? You don't have to change the data type for that, right? You don't have to change the data type, and that is not again a correct operation. And after that, when you'll have to do some operation with your age, then what will you do? Age is an integer number. So people also told me that convert your string into an age. That may look like a very simple stage, very simple solution, right? So suppose when I say age is equal to 36 and my name is John and I'm 36. As you have told me, if I'm converting my age into a string number, and after that, when I say age is equal to age plus 10, right? This will not give me a right solution, right? This will not give me a right solution. So you don't have to use this method, right? This is not a right approach where you convert them, right? Instead of that, you'll be using a format. Instead of that, you'll be using a format method, right? Format method is wherever I'll have to insert an integer, I'll be placing a placeholder. So when I place a placeholder here, right? A placeholder is a set of opening and closing curly braces. So when I say format dot age, 36 will be added. So now, can I add only one integer? No, you can add any number of integers in this way. Right? Look here, I'm adding 3 integers. Right? So when I add 3 integers, you will have to look into one thing. So when you say order format of, right? So if you have to print quantity first, then quantity should be the first term here. And if you have to print item number as the second one, then item number should be the second parameter in your format. Right? You will have to be very careful about the order of the parameters that you pass within the format function. And in order to overcome this, right? So in order to overcome this, we use numbers inside your placeholders. You use numbers inside your placeholders, and when you use numbers inside your placeholders, you need to you don't have to bother about the order in which you will be writing them, right? So this is your format function, and this is used to combine both a string and a integer in your output. And remember that when you will have to add an integer to a string, please don't convert it to a string and then add it to a string, right? So the correct method is using your format. And as I told you that when you will have to have a double quotes or a single quotes within a string, then you can go for your escape sequence, and these are some of the escape sequences you will find in Python, right? And the rest is all here. Right, and this method, remember I've told you about a strip method. The strip method is the first method in your strings. Do you remember what is your strip method?
Used for removing the white space, ma'am.
Removing the extra white spaces that is before and after a string, right? So similar to that strip function, you will have 2 methods here. One is called as your L strip and your other is called as your R strip, right? And L strip is used to remove only your leading white spaces. That is, the white spaces that are before the string will be removed by your L strip, and the white spaces that are after your string will be removed by your R strip. And it not only removes white spaces, it also removes any extra characters, right? Any extra characters, right, that are before, any extra punctuation marks, anything can be removed using your L strip method. Similarly, like your L strip, you will also have your R strip method, right? Okay. And there is one method you have Right? These three methods we'll see is numeric, is digit, and is decimal. Right? So now is we'll start with is numeric. Right? So this method checks whether your input is a number or not. Right? So as I told you, Python uses Unicode. Whenever I use /u, a /u represents Unicode. It represents a Unicode number, right? So these values are given only for your understanding, and you don't have to know the Unicode for each and every number, right? You don't have to know, right? So when I say is numeric of A, this is true because this stands for your Unicode of 0. And again, Unicode for the second is numeric for the second one. This is again true because this is Unicode of 2. And next one, you take C, 10 is a number, whereas km, kilometer, this is a alphabet. So when I apply is numeric here, this will return me false. And is digit method, this will return me true only if all are digits, right? So no Unicode is allowed here. Even if the Unicode, it is not allowed here. And exponents or power can be taken into account. So when you take here, everything is number. So this gives me true. And next is here, this includes only decimal numbers, right? This decimal includes only decimal numbers or Unicode values, right? So these are some of your methods. There's one more, ends with and start with. You'll have one more method, ends with and starts with, right? So starts with method, this method returns me true if a particular string starts with a given word, right? So here I'm checking whether your string starts with hello. So this is my input text, hello, welcome to my world, and text starts with hello. So this starts with hello, so this returns me true. I have a variation of the starts with method. So I'm checking if the position 7 to 20 starts with the character WEL. So how do you calculate the position number? H is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So 5 is this comma, 6 is a white space, and 7 is W, right? So WEL. So your position 7 starts with WEL. So this returns me true. And similarly, like your starts with method, you will also have a end with, right? So check hello, welcome to my world, right? This is your input string, and I'm checking whether my text ends with a dot, right? This text ends with a dot, so this is true. And similarly, you can also check if the given text ends with the phrase my world also, or else you can give a position number and also check. And remember, when you count the position, how do you count? H is 0, E is 1, L is 2, L is 3, O is 4, and comma is 5, and the blank space is 6, W is 7, and so on. So when you count the string, you will have to count the punctuation mark, and as well as the white spaces also are taken into account, right? So now we have completed your numbers and your strings. You have completed your numbers and your strings method, right? So now it's almost like 3:30. We'll go on for a short break of 5 minutes, and we'll come back by 3:35, right? We'll go on for a short break and be back by 3:35. So you're all back after the break. Shall we continue? You're all back?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Right,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
we'll start the session again. Right, we will now start with another data type. So we have been seeing the data type. So we have already discussed about your, we have seen what is number data type and what is string. So again, we'll be continuing with your list data type, right? So when you talk about list, and this list is very similar to your arrays, and they are very similar to array. So when I tell you that they are very similar to array, so what is an array? What do you mean by an array? Can someone define what is an array?
Collection of elements.
Collection of dissimilar elements.
Of same data type or different data type?
Dissimilar.
The same and different data types.
I'm talking about an array.
Dissimilar, ma'am.
Same, ma'am. Same data type.
An array is a
Same
collection
data
of
type.
elements of same data type. They are a collection of elements of the same data type or similar data type. But when you talk about a list in Python, it is again an ordered collection of data type. It is again an ordered collection where you can have elements of different data type. Elements of different data type. And this is a big difference between a list in Python and array, right? You don't have anything very specifically called as an array in Python. But when you talk about a list, this is very similar to an array, except that in a list you have different data type. And again, when you talk about a list, it is since they are very similar to an array, an index of your list also starts from 0, right? Your array indexes also starts from 0, and the list index also starts from 0. The list index also starts from 0. So now how do I create a list? How is a list? So when you have a list, the elements of a list are enclosed within a square bracket, and each and every element is separated with a comma. And each and every element is separated with a comma, and they are enclosed within a double square. They are enclosed within a square bracket. So to create a list, right? So this is how I create a list in Python. This list is a variable name. It's the name that I give. You can give any name that you want. And whenever you give a name of a variable, always remember that a variable name cannot be a reserved keyword name. Right? You cannot use a reserved keyword name as a variable name, and follow all the naming conventions. All the naming conventions for a variable should be followed here. It should be followed here. So here, this list is the name that you give. You can give any name that you want. X list, Y Z, my list, whatever name that you want, you can give here. And after that, you add the contents of an list, right? And since I've used a string here, all the contents are enclosed. You put them either within a double quotes or you put them either in a single quotes. And after that, say print of this list, and the list will be displayed to you as a output, right? And how do you access your element of your list? You'll be accessing the elements using your index number, and remember that your index number starts from 0. Your index number starts from 0. So this list of 0 is apple, this list of banana is 1, and this list of 2 is cherry, right? So now when I say this list of 1, banana will be displayed as your output. And here again, when you talk about your list, you will have your both negative indexing as well as, just like how you had a string slicing, you will also have slicing in your list. You'll both have positive slicing as well as negative slicing here. So now when I say this list of -1, when I say -1, I'm talking about your last element of your list, that is cherry. -2 will be banana, and -3 will be apple, right? The same kind of slicing, whatever that was done in your string, you can also do that in your list, right? So now when I say this list of 2 to 5, so when I say 2:5, you will have to print 2, 3, and 4, and your ending index will be excluded. So you'll be printing only 2, 3, and 4. So 2 is cherry, orange, and kiwi will be printed, and 5 will not be included, right? So now when I say :4, which means that, right? So now what do? You will be printing it from the first. So you'll be printing 0, 1, 2, and 3. 4 will not be included. So I don't have a starting index, only your ending index is your mentioned here. Starting range is not given and your ending range is mentioned. When your ending range is mentioned and your starting range is not mentioned, then you'll have to start from the beginning of your list. So which means that 0, 1, 2, and 3 and 4 will not be included. 4 will not be included. So now this is the vice versa case where your ending range is not included. When your ending range is not included and only your starting range is included, so begin from the starting range and go on till your end of your string. So you'll start printing from cherry till your mango, right? You will include your ending range only if your ending range is not mentioned, right? So do remember this. Only if your ending range is not mentioned, then you will be including your ending range. Then you'll be including your ending range, right? So next here again the same thing where when I say -1 is mango, -2 is melon, and so on. So when I say -4, I'll be printing -4, -3, and -2. -1 will not be included. Right? So remember, list is again, you can change the values, right? In a list, you'll be able to change the values here, right? So now when I say this list of 1, previously it was banana, and now after when I say this list of 1 is equal to black currant, banana changes to black currant, right? And you can use a for loop for looping through a list, right? Use a for loop and loop through the list. And if you want to check whether a given element is there in a list or not, you can do this using an operator called as your in operator. So this in operator is called as your membership operator. In is called as your membership operator, right? So now if I check if apple in this list, and this will either return me true or false, right? And similarly to in, there is one more option called as not in. So to find the length of your list, you will be using your len function, right? Len function, when you use this len function with the string, this len function gives me the length of a given string. How many characters do I have in that string? That is your length of your string. And when I use this len function with that, it gives me the length of your string. And now when I use a len function with the list, this returns me the number of elements that I have in a list. This list contains 3 elements, so the length of the list is 3. So this is how you use a len function. This is your usage of your len function along with your list, right? And remember, how do you delete a element from a list? So to delete it, you will be using your index, using your index value and delete it. When you say del of this list of 0, apple will be deleted, right? So how do you add 2 strings together? Just like you add 2 strings together, you'll be using your plus operator. And this is the very simplest way of adding 2 lists together. Just use a string. Sorry, just use a plus operator to add 2 lists together. And there are 2 more methods to add 2 lists. The first is, the other method is you can use an append method. And append is your built-in method. So always remember, whenever you use an append method, when I say list 1 dot append of x, which means that x is the elements in your list 2. So list 1 is ABC, list 2 is 1, 2, 3. So for x in list 2, so you take each and every element of your list 2 and you add it to your list 1. And when you use your append method, it will be added only after your end of your list 1. After your list 1 completes, then you will be adding your contents of your list 2. And your next method is called to be your extend method, and these are all the built-in methods that you have in Python, right? And whenever you take a case of Python, right? You would have studied this. So we say that write a program to reverse a string in C without using a string reverse method, right? But that is not the case of Python. So whenever you write a program or do any operations in a Python language, you can always use your Python methods. And remember, there are n methods associated with each and every data type of your Python. And I'm repeating you once again, I'm giving you only the very important methods now because of your time constraints, right? So an extend method is also the other method for adding to list. So there are three possible ways of adding to list. First is you use the plus operator, then you use your append method, and then you'll use your extend method to add two strings together, right? And remember, you'll have one more method which is called as a list constructor, and this list constructor is used to create a new list. List constructor, using your list constructor, you can create a new list also, right? So without your list constructor, how did we create? We just said this list is equal to apple, banana, and cherry. But now when I use a list constructor, right? And remember, when you have created, you have used square brackets here, right? When I say this list is equal to list of, and you don't have to be bothered about your square bracket and all those things. So everything will be taken care by your list constructor, right? And list methods, right? We have seen what is an append method, and remember, append method is used to add not only a list to a list, it is also used to add an element to a list. And when you add an element to a list using your append method, this will be added to your end of your list. And clear method is used to remove only your contents of your list, right? Only your contents will be erased, and the list will not be erased from your memory, right? Your clear method removes only the elements from a list, and if you can see the output, it is an empty list, right? And next is copy method. To copy a list, you cannot just say list 1 equal to list 2. It will not be copied. You will have to use your copy method to copy two lists. And count method, when you say count method, this returns the count of the number of occurrences of cherry. Cherry appears only once, so 1 will be written as your output. And if you take the case here, 9 appears 2 times. 9 appears 2 times, right? So the output will be 2 here. And extend method we have seen ordinary. And index method, right? When you say index of cherry, what is the index of cherry? Index of apple is 0, index of banana is 1, index of cherry is 2. So that will be written as your output to you. And now, if you can take the case here, you need to find the index of 32. But you have 2 occurrences of 32. In that case, what do you do? When there are more than 1 occurrences of a given value, when there is more than 1 occurrence of a given value, then you will take into account only the first occurrence, right? So this is your first occurrence of 32. So what is the index value of this? 0, 1, 2, and 3. The first occurrence will be given as your output, right? And insert method. What is the difference between an insert method and an append method?
In insert we can add anywhere, ma'am, but in append we can add only
Right. When you talk about an insert method, you can insert it anywhere because you give a position and then you give an index position and then the value. But when you talk about append, you can only add it at your end of your list. This is a difference between your index and your append method, right? And pop method, remember, right? So when you say just pop is used to delete. When you simply give pop, the last element will be deleted, right? And when you have a pop method, there is an addition information to this pop method. Your earlier versions of Python, when you use your earlier versions of Python, whenever I simply give pop, any element will be randomly deleted, right? So it can also, apple can also be deleted, banana can also be deleted, and cherry can also be deleted, right? In your earlier versions of your Python, any random element, right? Any random element can be deleted when I simply give pop. But when you take your recent version or your current versions of Python, when you just say this list of pop, right, the last element will be deleted, right? And if you want to remove a specific index position, then pass on that index position. So now when you say pop of 1, so now when you give pop of 1, banana will be deleted. 1 represents an index position, and now banana will be deleted, right? So now you can also remove an element by giving a value. In a pop, you are able to give only the index, and when you talk about remove, you can also give a value, right? So now, so del keyword, remember we have always seen about your del keyword, right? So now when you give a del keyword, right? What is the difference between a clear and a del keyword? When you give clear, only the contents of the list will be deleted, but the list will still be in the memory. And when I give del, your entire list will be deleted from the memory. Your entire list will be deleted from your memory, right? So this is your difference between, remember this difference between clear and del. And reverse, your entire list will be in reversed order. And you can use a sort function. When you use a sort function, your sorting happens in ascending order. When there are numbers, your sorting happens in ascending order, and when there are strings, it happens in your alphabetical order, right? So now can you give me the output of this? Can you try the output for this one? And as I told you, any operation that done on a string, this is a plus operation where you are adding the list together, and this is a repetition operator. Your string will be repeated twice. And now when I say 0 and 2, right? So 0 and 1 will be printed. So 1 and high will be printed here. So now when you say this 3 and colon, what does it mean? You start from 3 and then you print till your end of your string, right? So this is your output, right? So now we have completed your list, right? So we have completed 3 data types: numbers, strings, and list. You have any doubts till this?
No, ma'am.
Now we'll be starting with something very important, and this is called as your list comprehension, right? So tell me, what do you know about the list comprehension? You have heard about the list comprehension? You have heard about it? right? I'm not asking you what is list comprehension. Have you heard about this?
Ma'am.
Right, you have heard about list comprehension, right? So fine, if you have heard about it, then that's fine. So when you talk about list comprehension is where we say we have shorter syntaxes. We write shorter syntaxes based on your existing list. So for a list comprehension to be there, or for a list comprehension to exist, the first condition is you require an existing list. Without an existing list, we cannot have a list comprehension. We cannot have a list comprehension. So just go through this program and tell me if you can understand this program. Very simple program. Just go through this program and tell me what do you understand from the program. So you have a list called as fruits, right? And this fruits list contain apple, banana, cherry, kiwi, and mango, right? So now I'm creating another list called as new list. So initially my new list is empty, right? So now what do I do? After that, I have a for loop here, right? So I'll have a for loop. So what do I do in for loop? So in my for loop, I traverse my fruits list, and after a fruits list, after the for loop, I have a if statement. So in that if statement, what do I do is that I check if there is a character A in X, then it will be appended to your new list. So this will be like, so for the first time, the value of X will be apple. So I have A in apple, so a apple will be added to your new list. And now second time banana will be added to the new list. Cherry, no A, it will not be added. Kiwi, no A, it will not be added. And mango has got A, so it will be added to your new list. So what is the contents of my new list now? Apple, banana, and mango. So you are clear with this program?
Yes.
Right, so you understand this program now. So how many lines does this program has? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this program is it's a small program, and this has got 6 lines of code. So what is my list comprehension? The list comprehension is where I write programs using shorter syntaxes, right? So, and for a list comprehension to exist, I have an existing list. Do you have an existing list here? So based on the existing list, you are creating a new list. This is the first criteria for your list comprehension, right? So I have an existing list, and based on this, I'm creating a new list. So now I can write a list comprehension, right? So now how do I write a list comprehension? This is my existing list, and then I'll have to create a new list called as new list. I say X for X in fruits if A in X, right? There is no append, there's no nothing, right? Your for and your if is being combined in a single line, right? Now I'm combining my for and if in a single line. So this is how you write your list comprehension, right? You're clear with this? So this is how I write a list comprehension. And always remember, for a list comprehension to exist, you need to have an existing list. Only from your existing list, you will be creating a new list here, right? So now, so we'll see some variation. What are the variations that you can have in a list comprehension, right? So previously, I had an if comprehension saying that X for X in fruits if A in X. So this is a list comprehension where I don't have a if condition. Right? If you want, you can have an if condition, or if you don't want, you don't need a if condition. That depends on your program that you write. So now when I say X for X in fruits, right? So which means that all the elements of the fruits will be added to your new list. There are no conditions to be checked here. So nothing happens. So all the elements in your fruits list will be added to your new list, right? So now we say next is you can use an iterable. So what is an iterable? Right? An iterable object, right? This term is very common in Python. You say very frequently iterable. So I'll tell you what are iterables in Python. A string is an iterable object. You have list is an iterable object. Tuple and sets, these are all examples of an iterable. So what is iterable, right? When I'm able to move from one to the next element, from the second to the third, from the third to the fourth, and this is called as an iterable in Python, right? Your range function, you can create an iterable list. Using your range function, you can create an iterable list. So when I say new list is equal to X for X in the range of 10. When I say range of 10, it starts from 0 till 9, right? Your range of 10, when I say range of 10, it starts from 0 and then it goes till 9, right? 10 will not be included. And the new list is created, right? If I want to have a condition, I can also have here. I say X for X in the range of 10 if X is less than 5. If X is less than 5, then I print the new list. When you say X is less than 5, then this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Less than 5, 5 will not be included, right? So if you want, you can change them to uppercase, lowercase, all the possible built-in functions can also be used here. All your possible built-in functions can be used here, right? So now I've given you a list. I've given you a program. I want you to write your list comprehension now. Right, fast. I'll give you 2 minutes, and I want you to write it now. But make it faster. Right, that's right. Yeah, Manju, your answer is right. And for Manju, it's like someone gave me the answer. Yes, your answer is also right. Shaker, your answer is also right. Yes, Surya, your answer is right. Divya, Subhash, that's right. Devil, right. Selva Kumar, Swati. I'm sorry if I missed anyone, right? Right, thank you. Yeah, Shalini, thank you all. So again, so this is the answer, right? So remember, for a list comprehension, you should have an existing list, and based on the existing list, you are developing or you are creating a new list based on your existing list. And there's one more interesting thing about a list comprehension. And when you talk about a list comprehension, we have a statement which says that every list comprehension is a for loop. Every list comprehension is a for loop, but not every for loop is a list comprehension. You understand? Every list comprehension is a for loop, but not every for loop is a list comprehension. Right? This is something very important, so keep this in mind, right? So I'm repeating the statement. Every list comprehension is a for loop, but not every for loop is a list comprehension, right? So this is with your list, right? So now we will again start. Right, we will. It will quickly recall your operators, right? And we'll have a small quiz before the end of this session, right? So we'll have operators, right? So tell me, what are the operators that you know? Arithmetic, relational, bitwise,
Logical operator, assignment operator.
operators. Right. Can you list down the arithmetic operators? Can someone list down the arithmetic operators?
Addition, subtraction, multiplication.
Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division.
Modulus.
Modulus. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus.
Percentage.
Floor division. Very good people are giving me the answer. Floor division. Right. Now I have a question. Do I have, you have something called as plus. You remember? Unary addition, unary subtraction.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Do I have that operator in Python?
No, ma'am.
Operator? You remember this operator T++. You have it in C. You have it in you have it in Python. Unary plus and unary minus. Unary addition, unary subtraction. No, you don't have them, right? So remember, when you talk about your arithmetic operators, always remember. Hello. Have them in your.
Sir, naga the CRM nagar vandu pesna Rajendra sir பேரு பொன்னியம்மன் கோயில் opposite Jacob Foundation. So பொன்னியம்மன் கோயில் opposite பொன்னியம்மன் கோயில் opposite.
Yourself, Jeffrey. Right, so this is like in Python. Remember, you don't have any unary addition and unary subtraction operators, right? So now almost like many operators new, or we have studied all the operators, so we will see the operators that are new to you, right? So we'll start with your arithmetic operators, almost the same: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, remainder, floor division. Floor division is something that is new to you, and when you talk about exponent, you have exponent, right? You have exponent in C, C++ and Java. But when you say exponent, you will be using what symbol is used there for your exponent?
Star.
I'm not talking here. There. In the other languages, you'll be using your cap symbol, and here you'll be using a double asterisk. But the way they operate is just the same, right? So now I'll have you a question here. Yeah, Jagadish, that's a very good answer. So now when you talk about exponent operator, right? How does your exponent, or how does it operate? From left to right or right to left?
Left to right.
Right? Are you sure? It's from left to right. It's from left to right. And you have heard about your floor division?
Yes.
So what is a floor division?
Gives the quotient only.
So what about this division?
Gives the decimal value.
So 7 divided by 5. What is the answer?
1.4 for division, and for floor division 1.
Floor division.
it's 1. So here there are 3 types of division operator. So when you say divide, it will give you the quotient as it is. And when you say the remainder, you also call it to be a modular division. Only your remainder will be returned to you. And when you say a floor division, right, the quotient will be rounded off to your nearest integer. Your quotient will be rounded off to your nearest integers, right? So when you talk about round off, previously 1.5, how do you round off 1.5 to your nearest integer?
2.
2, ma'am.
2 or 1?
2. 2, ma'am.
1.6?
2.
1.4?
1.
1.4 is 1, right? So if you are using your later versions of Python, previous version of Python, remember, if you're using your previous version of Python, 1.5 will be rounded off to 1, previous versions of Python. So nowadays, you'll be using your current version, and specifically when you write your exams, you'll be using only your online compilers. So always remember 1.5 will be rounded off to 2. Anything above 1.5 and 1.5 will be rounded off to 2. So remember this in mind. This is a big difference because in some of your online tutorials, if you go through some of your online tutorials also, it says that 1.5 will be rounded off to 1, but that is not wrong, because since it is done in your previous version, it was rounded off to 1, and in your current version, it is all rounded off to 2, right? So this is, and comparison operators, what is this? Equal to, and this is your not equal to, less than, equal to, greater than, less than, greater than. And assignment operators, you'll have equal to, plus equal to, minus equal to, then you'll have your division equal to, remainder equal to, exponent equal to, and everything is possible here. And when you take your bitwise operators, right? So what is A and B? You will have, what are your bitwise operators? You'll have AND, OR, XOR, left shift, and your right shift operators, right? So when you say your AND, you will follow your AND gate, and OR, you'll follow your OR. This is your XOR, and this is your negation, right? All your zeros will be converted to 1, and your 1 will be converted to 0, right? So now when you talk about your right shift, right, this is your right shift, right? So now when I say A is equal to 10, A right shift of 1, how do you work on this actually? How did I get the answer 5? How did I get the answer 5?
Dividing by
2.
Shifting the binary value of 10 by 2 bits, right?
Right, that is right. What you're telling is very right. So you mean to say that first 10 should be converted into its equivalent binary form, and then after that I'll have to convert your bits, right? So remember, as I told you that we are again studying in an exam point of view, right? So I'll tell you a shortcut here. So many of you should be knowing it, and for those who are not, if you're not sure of it, right, I'll send in your answers in your, I'll type in your answers in your chat box, right? So always remember, when you right shift a number, the value of a number decreases, right? The value of a number decreases, right? So this should be like, so here the number is 10. So you say, for number I have n. So you say n divided by 2 to the power, right? N divided by 2 to the power 1. Since I have 1, it is 2 to the power 1 here. And if at all, if I had 2 here, so this will be like 10 divided by 2 to the power 2. And 10 divided by 2 to the power 3. And if you get a number in decimal point, you will have to round it off to your nearest integers. So remember this. So when you say the number is 10, you can just write it as 10 divided by 2 to the power 1. 2 to the power 1 is 1 is 1. So I get the answer as 5. So now I'll give you one more question. So now do it for A is equal to 20. So A is equal to 20 and A right shift of 2. So give me your answer first. So how did you do? Right. If you start converting and doing it, it takes time, right? So 10 divided by 2 to the power 2. So 2 to the power 2 was 4. So 10 divided by 2 answer is 5. Right. So you're clear with this? So next we'll move on to your left shift, right? So when you go for your left shift, the value of a number increases. So whenever you go for your left shift, remember the value of your number increases. So when I say your value of your number increases, so what do? That number into, you don't divide, but instead you multiply. So now I say 5 into 2 to the power 1, that is 10. And here it's 5 into 2 to the power 2, that is 4. So it's 20. I'm sorry, it's 20. It's not 10 here. Right? It's 20. Right? You're clear with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So remember, what you have told me is perfectly right. Converting into binary and doing this, it takes time. Right? When you convert it and start doing it, it takes time. So this is again a shorter method to do that. Right? So remember this method. Right? And logical operators and, or, and, not, and membership operator in and not in. And then you will have your identity operators is and not is, right? So these are few operators that are new to you. And remember your left shift and your right shift that I've told you now, right? So we'll quickly go through some questions now. Right, the first question. Is Python case sensitive?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sensitive. Remember, Python is case sensitive. What is the maximum possible length of an identifier? Identifier is again, you mean variable.
63.
63, 31. See, when I was talking about variable, did I tell you the size of a variable? Did I tell you that this should be the maximum size of a variable? No.
No, ma'am.
You don't have any limit, right? You don't have any limit for that. Which of the following is invalid?
A.
Why it is invalid? A variable start with an underscore.
Valid, ma'am. None of them mentioned because before A it should not be.
Right.
We should not start with underscore, ma'am.
Underscore.
See, I've told you a variable name can start with an underscore. It is
Option
valid.
C.
A is valid.
Option D, ma'am.
C.
No.
D, ma'am.
I'll give you the answer. It's D, and I'll also tell you why it is, right? A variable name can start with an underscore. So this is double underscore, right? B is double underscore, right? So this is double underscore. This is also possible. A variable name can start with an underscore. So double underscore, triple underscore, how many number of underscores that you want, you can give. So you have trailing and leading underscores. That is also possible, right? This is double underscore. So when we type it, it comes in this way. Remember, this is double underscore. So all the three variable names are valid, right? So it's none of the above. You are clear? Which of the following is an invalid variable?
D, ma'am.
D.
First one started from bulk.
D, ma'am.
What D?
E.
B, ma'am.
First one begin with a number.
Because since it starts with a number, since a variable name starts with a number, it is an invalid. Right, you will not be knowing the answer for this. I will tell you. as I told you, underscores can be used as a name of a variable, and a variable name can begin with an underscore, right? But we don't use it, right? We don't advise using it, because as we move into classes, right, when you start studying with an object-oriented concepts, you will understand that the private variables of a class will be named using an underscore, right? That is why we don't practice the habit of using an underscore for a variable name, right? So which of the following is not a keyword? It's A. Eval is not a keyword. And all keywords in Python should be
Capitalized.
no, it can be in any of the ways.
None of the mentioned.
None of the above.
It can be in any of the ways. It's option A, right? A variable name can be unlimited, right? Underscore and ampersand are not the only special characters, right? And also that not all private characters will have leading and trailing underscore. Only some private members will have that leading and trailing underscore. So what is true is unlimited length, right? Which of the following is an invalid statement?
B, ma'am.
Option D.
It's B. Option
B.
You cannot have spaces.
Cannot be a variable.
B, ma'am. B, ma'am.
B.
A, ma'am.
IN. IN is a membership operator. IN is a membership operator, and it cannot be used as a name of a variable.
B, ma'am.
Option B.
B, ma'am. D, ma'am.
B.
Right? You use double asterisk for power.
B, ma'am.
4 division.
B.
B.
What is the order of precedence?
Board mass rule, ma'am.
A, ma'am.
So first is your parenthesis. After your parenthesis, exponential, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So this should be your option A. Same order, it's your option A. 22 mod 3.
Option A, ma'am.
B, ma'am. Option B, ma'am. B.
It's not 22 divided by 7. It's mod. You are using your reminder. So it's only 1.
1.
So
1.
B. These are 21. So your reminder will be 1. Mathematical operations can be performed on a string.
No, false, ma'am.
No.
You cannot perform mathematical operations on a string. Operators for the same strings.
Left to right, ma'am.
C, ma'am.
Precedents are evaluated in
Left to right, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
right. What is the output of this expression?
9, ma'am.
C, ma'am. 3, ma'am. 3, ma'am. 3. B, ma'am.
Evaluated first your exponent. So it should be 1 into 1 power 3. First evaluate your exponent. So 1 power 3, and after that 3 into 1. So the answer is 3. Which one of the following has the same level of precedence?
Addition and subtraction.
Addition
and subtraction.
Have the same level of precedence. Int of x implies that variable x is converted to an integer.
True, ma'am.
True.
Right. So what does int of x means?
Shows x is an integer.
How does
Typecasting, madam.
Typecasting, ma'am.
Right, this is a typecasting. You are converting x to an integer. So it's true. It's true. You are converting it to an integer. So this is true. Precedence.
Exponential.
Parenthesis.
Parenthesis.
Which of these is not a core data type?
Class.
What type of data type is class?
Object oriented.
Object
Defined data type. Do you have something called as an object-oriented data type?
No.
It is
User-defined.
an object-oriented concept, but it is a user-defined data type. A class is a user-defined data type. Remember, it is a concept of object-oriented, but it is a user-defined data type. Given a that does not return
Void.
value, what value is thrown by default when you execute in shell? And this
Void.
is
Void.
Right, first listen, this is Python and this is not C. You have studied anything?
None.
Void in Python, it is none. Right? Remember, it is none. What will be the output of this?
A.
Only H and E.
HE, ma'am.
HE will be printed.
Option A.
Only your option A will run without any errors, right? So when you say round off, this will be rounded off to 46. What is the return type of a function ID? See, it's very simple. Whenever you take an ID, it is always a integer value. It is always a integer value.
B.
All the above.
A, ma'am.
D, ma'am.
So this says in Python, we do not specify types. It is directly interpreted by the compiler. So consider the following operation, right? All the above will return you only an integer, right? All of the above. Float division will return you an integer. When you say int of 13 divided by 2, this is again, it is converted to an integer. 13 modulo 2 will also give me a integer, right? So all of your above options, right? So now I'll give, so look at your chat box. What do you mean by INF? INF stands for infinity. What is the data type of infinity?
Integer.
No, it's
Complex, ma'am. Complex.
INF is float. And now I'm giving you one more question. NaN. NaN. What is NaN? It's not none. It's not none.
Number or arithmetic.
Not a number. What is the data type?
Numeric.
Complex. Boolean, ma'am.
Boolean, ma'am.
It's a float. It's a float. Float. Remember this also. Right? What error occurs here? Apple is equal to mango.
Syntax.
Name error.
Type error.
Name error. Right? You have a name error. This is a name error. Because mango is not declared, so you'll have a name error. And this one. What will be the output of the following code?
Option A, ma'am. Indentation.
Indentation error. If you look at this indentation, this second A is somewhat inside, right? So this is a indentation error. And 29, what data type is here?
List.
List. Key and values we use.
Tuple.
You use a dictionary for to store a key and a value. You use a dictionary, right? So with this, we'll complete your session today. You have any doubts? Right, if you have any doubts, you can get it clarified now.
The recording be shared, ma'am.
Right, regarding your recording, your sir will be it will be informed to you by yourself. Right? So everything that will be informed to you by yourself. And if you have anything, you can let me know, or else thank you all. So when you come tomorrow, please go through your basics from so tomorrow we'll be studying about your dictionary, text, pupil, your decision making and all those things. So please go through. So everything will be informed from you, sir. So thank you all. So please go through whatever that you have studied. Okay, thank you. Is there anything? If you can let me know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all.
Call on us for any support.